Hi guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you're new here, hi, my name is Angie. Glad to have you here. And today we're going to be talking about important things you need to know if you're thinking of moving to France. Initially, I wanted to make this video specifically for people who are moving to France through the language assistant program, or what we call the TAPIF. But I just thought to also include other tips that may be useful for any other person looking to move to France, maybe for a short, medium or long-term period. So I hope you find this video beneficial, and I also want to give a very big shout out to the Instagram user who DM'd me directly with a list of questions on things she wanted to find out about what she needed to know before moving to France. So thank you very much, because you're the inspiration for this video. And without further ado, let's get straight into the video.
First things first, the most asked question I've received is, Angie, how did you even get to move to France? I moved to France for work through the language assistant program.
You might be wondering what is the language assistant program, and basically this is a program launched by the French government through the French Education International, and it helps young people from all over the world to move to France for a few months, usually 7 to 8 months, to teach English in French public schools. So kind of a cultural exchange program, that's how I look at it, where you move to France, you have the security of getting a job, and also you have the chance to use your expertise and your skills to teach English to children. You can choose to teach children either in primary schools, middle schools or high schools. So it's a very culturally immersive experience, because like I have mentioned in my previous videos, you move there full force. Like, you're moving there, you're paying rent, you are entering the French system, you're getting a social security number, you're getting a salary, you're paying taxes. You also get to experience different people, because you're going to be working with colleagues from all over the world. I give you an example of where I was in a small town in the south of France called Carcassonne. I'm Kenyan, so my roommate was American, who was my colleague as well. And then we had a Taiwanese friend, we had a friend from Argentina, we had a friend from Spain, a friend from Ireland, we had another friend from the US. So it's a very immersive and exciting cultural exchange program, on top of you gaining professional experience that you can put in your CV if you're training to be a teacher, if you're interested in linguistics, or if you're interested in international relations. And even for someone like me who studied law, I still find it very relevant, because if someone asks me, I've already used it in a lot of interviews subsequent to the experience, where someone has asked me, so what have you gained from this moving to France for 7 months? And I have been able to explain that through the transferable skills that I learned, you know, like being adaptable, going through paperwork, preparations for presentations when you're teaching kids in the classes. It's an excellent way of growing up and moving into the world and shaping your future, and also getting to experience a lot of fun and a lot of, you know, exciting moments. So how you can apply for the language assistant program varies depending on the country you're coming from. For Kenya, I learned of it through the Alliance Française de Nairobi. There's also websites, there's Instagram pages, there's Facebook pages, there's Twitter pages, and there's LinkedIn pages that you can look into, specifically the French Education International pages. That's where you can learn of this opportunity. The application process starts September of every year to January of the following year. So between September and January, you need to throw in your application so that you're selected. Anyway, so that is the basis of how I got to France and how you can also get to France, in case you are wondering. Let's go to question 1. On the day of arrival to France, how did you know what train to take, and how did you get to your city? When you get to Paris, Charles de Gaulle is probably where you're gonna land. That's the main airport of the city, and in Charles de Gaulle everything is already very busy and very hectic. So what you can do in advance to make your life easier is download an app called SNCF. Now SNCF is the main transport provider in France, and it gives you connects to trains and buses that can get you from one city to the next. So once you download the SNCF app, it's gonna ask you to create an account. You can create an account, give the details, your phone number, your email address, and then you already know, I'm assuming, which city you're going to go to if you're not gonna be in Paris. So you can search the city, and then search the trains that will take you there, and then search the timings, so that on the day of your arrival, you will just land from the airplane, and then go to the underground where the trains are, and then look for the train that is specific to you. The good thing about the SNCF app is that it sends you reminders, and then you can pay in advance, and then it gives you the exact details of the train that you're supposed to take. What you need to look out for is your train number, the time that it is leaving, and the destination. Having the SNCF app is pretty much like 90% of the work done. The 10% is you being sharp and you knowing where to go and you knowing how to get to where you're going. So like I said, the Charles de Gaulle Airport luckily has a train station just in the underground, so you don't really have to move around, but that's for people who are going for long haul trains. If you have to go through Paris, I wish you the very best. If you're going through Paris, then you have to be extra careful because there's a lot of connections you'll probably need to make. You'll have to buy multiple tickets. So what I would suggest is talk to someone in advance about how to move from the airport, either to Gare de Lyon, Gare de l'Est, Gare du Nord. Those are the three main stations in Paris that will then connect you to other cities outside Paris. I'd suggest just do a lot of research in advance or talk to someone who is already there or who already understands the system so that they can guide you on exactly how to go. But I believe the first train, the first metro you'll ever take if you're going into Paris is RERB. RERB will get you into the center. The second question I got is, if you had your own place to sleep on the first day, how did you get it? The answer to this question again is research in advance. So one thing I made sure to do before I even bought my plane ticket is to ensure that I had a place to rent and that I had a roommate, and that everything was going to be okay in terms of me getting there and I don't have to look for an Airbnb or a hotel to sleep on the first day, because I'm just the kind of person who just wants to just do everything in advance and then just chill and wait for the actual day. What I would advise is look for websites that have rentals listed, or talk to someone. Again, having a contact on the ground is so important. I cannot overemphasize the importance of having someone on the ground who is already living there, or at least who has lived there, because the thing is, there's a lot of scams, unfortunately, online. You might be talking to someone who purports to be a landlord, not knowing that they are a scam artist, and then they tell you to pay a deposit in advance, and then on the day of arrival, that address doesn't even exist. We had so many cases of that, and it was very unfortunate. So what I can ask you to do is, if you don't have a close contact on the ground, make a list of all the findings that you've seen online, the websites, the listings. Out of all those, do your due diligence, look for reviews. If possible, contact the people listed there. They have email addresses, I'm sure, and phone numbers. If you're able to call and make an international call, you can do that. Just please do your due diligence and find an apartment. So for me, in my case, because I was going to the language assistant program that I have already explained, I had what is called a prof ref. A prof ref is the teacher who is going to be like your supervisor, and depending on the type of prof ref you get, some are really good, some are really involved in your life. They want to make sure you settle in very well, as smoothly as possible. So luckily, my prof ref was the best. She took me in, she gave me a number of my fellow colleague who was also going to be in my city. So she connected us, gave us a list of landlords that had previously hosted language assistants, and out of that, she recommended one who ended up being my lovely landlords who treated us like their grandkids, and I'm so grateful, and their apartment was so beautiful. But that was my case, and I was very lucky. So if you're not in the same position, please just do your due diligence. I would not recommend paying a deposit in advance, because to be honest, that's how a lot of scams work. If a landlord is legit and they trust you and you trust them, then there's no problem in waiting until you get there, and then you sign your contract, which is very important. You will have to sign a lease contract for the number of months that you will be there. There's nothing wrong with waiting. I am very wary of those landlords who ask you to pay a deposit in advance unless you're very sure, or unless they're operating on a very secure site, like specifically for landlords. Try and find Facebook groups as well. There's a lot of Facebook groups that help connect people who are looking for roommates abroad, including France, or someone who's renting out a room in their house. So just be very proactive in your research and use social media to your advantage. Question number 3, how to open a bank account? Oh golly, don't I love this question. Now, if you've watched my previous video on things I wish I knew before I moved to France, you know that opening a bank account was top of my most harrowing experiences in France. And this is because I was not adequately prepared about how intense the experience was gonna be. I thought opening a bank account is just going to the bank, telling them your name, details, address, a few things here and there. But not in France. No. So first things first, there is this vicious cycle that no one really talks about, whereby if you want to open a bank account in France, you kind of have to have a house address already. And then some landlords, before they sign you a lease or like a renting, contract, they have to see your banking details. So it's like, I need a bank account to get a house, but I also need to have an address to have a bank account. So you see the vicious cycle of, you know, like back and forth that we're dealing with over here. So again, back to what I said, if you can, please find a landlord in advance, because it's going to save you a lot of stress. And I really hope you get a nice, understanding landlord, because it's going to make your life way, way easier. Because one thing about French bureaucracy and French paperwork, your address is going to be a key requirement in most of the applications you're going to make. So back to the banking, opening your bank account. So first things first, if possible, please have your address already established. Talk to your landlord, ask them if you can use their address in advance, and then you can work out the contracting and leasing details later. Secondly, you will have to show proof of earnings or proof of having a job. So essentially you'll have to show your contract if you're there for work, and if you have saved up earnings, you might have to explain how you've gathered up all those earnings, especially if you're new to the country. And the banking agent that you're working with might also ask you any other random question about your finances. Are you funded by your parents? Do you fund yourself fully? How long are you planning to be in France? So you just have to be ready to provide as much information as possible, which is why being prepared in advance is essential. Thirdly, because you'll be a foreigner, most likely you have to have your passport, and your passport has to have a valid visa. The fourth thing I remember I was asked was whether I had insurance. It's something called responsabilité civile, which is basically you getting an insurance to protect you in case you go out there and mess up someone. So picture this, for example, you're waiting in line somewhere and then there's a security check, and when you're passing you knock down someone's phone and you break their screen by accident. So responsabilité civile comes in to help you indemnify yourself against the cost that you would have otherwise had to incur if that person claimed directly against you. So that's also something else you might be asked for. It's not compulsory, but you need to know in advance in case you're asked for it. And there's also like very many options for you to apply for your responsabilité civile. There's so many providers. It's basically just an insurance to ensure that you are safe and that in case you harm anyone else by accident, you are okay. Something else with banking, you will have to have an appointment. You don't just show up to the bank and then you end the session by having a bank account ready. No. You will first go to the bank, they will take your details, they'll scan a copy of your passport and visa, and then they'll give you a date to go back. Just make time. If you're given a date, make sure you're available on that date so that you avoid inconveniences and delays. Something else you need to know is most banks do not operate on Mondays in France, as do many other businesses. Generally on Mondays in France, for business owners especially, it's a down day. So you need to be ready for that. In case you have a strict timeline that you're working with, just know Mondays might not be the best times for you to aim for if you're opening a bank account. The last thing I would suggest in terms of bank accounts is that you will be asked to deposit a certain sum so that a bank account is active once you get to activating it. My bank asked me for around 50 euros, so I had to have 50 euros in cash. So you just need to be ready as well, have some money in hand, and then they will take you, you'll deposit, and then your bank account will be activated. The last thing I promise, the last thing I've remembered is you will have a lot of paperwork to sign, because basically, I don't know if it's the same for many other countries, the banking system is not really that complicated. But in France, I found that, first of all, I signed a contract and I was not even greatly aware of it when I signed. But basically, when you open a bank account for most banks, you will be signing a contract to receive services, to receive banking services, and it's valid for at least 1 year. So that means for that 1 year, you more or less cannot move banks. So for someone like me who was only there for 7 months, when it came time to close down my bank account because I didn't see the need of maintaining it again, it's a contract basis. So you have to honor the terms of your contract. And if you feel like you need to move banks all of a sudden, or all of a sudden you don't want to, use that bank account again, there's some hoops that you'll have to jump. So it's not as straightforward. So there's gonna be a lot of paperwork that you will need to sign. And if you don't speak French as your native language, good luck, because there's papers upon pages of legalese, banking, and it's all in French. So you kind of need to figure out what you're getting yourself into. And I really just hope you work with a nice agent who is willing to explain things to you so that you understand exactly what you're getting yourself into. But at the end of the day, the goal is to just get a nice bank account Which brings me to my next point. I keep saying the last one, but at this point, just bear with me. There is going to be maintenance fees, which is also not something that happens in all, banking situations. But in France, almost all banks will charge a maintenance fee. And of course, because the banking agents are there to make business, they will start you off. They will tell you of the highest fee first. So make sure to ask about the other fees that are there, because it's always going to be a lower package. So for example, I was given a package of 8 euros per month and I just didn't find it necessary. So I opted for the cheapest, basicest. I think it used to cost me like 2 euros per month to maintain my bank account. So that's something else you need to have in mind in case you're looking to save. There's also options to open automatic deduction system every month so that it helps you save easier. There's a few, partnership programs where people in a banking system can join it's kind of a cooperative society or a SACCO, where you are deducted a certain amount and then it's invested for you. There's a few banks that have worked well for people. So there's banks like Crédit Agricole, Banque Populaire, LCL, and a few more. And there's also an online banking option called Nickel. The thing with Nickel is that it's very easy to open and maintain because it's online based. There's a 20 euro maintenance fee. If you need a quick, fast and easy, option, Nickel is also a really good banking option. Next question I got was, what happens when I fall sick? Can I get off from work? Is there insurance? How does the medical system work? This is a very triggering question because much as I was very lucky that I never got sick in France, God was really good to me. For the 7 months that I was there, I never really experienced a medical emergency, but I know of people who did. In fact, there was a time I visited a friend and they collapsed quite literally in front of me, and I was like, what do I do? Oh my God, what do I do?
Oh my gosh, what do I do?
First of all, yes, if you fall sick, you can definitely take off from work. That's, if anyone would deny you off from work, then that's just diabolical and you should probably sue them. But secondly is the French medical system is very complicated, because here's the thing. Somehow, I don't know how this is supposed to work, but somehow you're supposed to have a personal doctor. So this gets tricky if you're a foreigner, if you're a resident living there, because I don't have a personal doctor and I'm already sick. In fact, I have collapsed. I am not conscious. So what do you want me to do? So this is the conundrum that we found ourselves in, where someone collapsed in front of me and I couldn't get them medical attention because we didn't know, I didn't know where to go. There's an option to call the ambulance, but the person also hadn't gotten their paperwork processed for the medical insurance. In France, there's a social security system, and there's a medical insurance system, and there's this green card that you're given called the carte vitale, and basically that's like the NHIS of France, where you get access to medical services using that card. For emergency services, I guess you can get the treatment that you need, the emergency services that you need, but it does not pay for 100% of the expenses. However, it does cover quite a significant amount. It should be like around 75%. So that's great and dandy. If you have your carte vitale, then you're good to go. But for someone who has just arrived in the country, is facing the French bureaucracies and delays that come, because this person had applied for their medical card, but this was like 5 months later, still no card in sight. So what are you supposed to do? So there's this thing where you can look for a doctor, but again, finding a doctor is so tricky because you have to have a personal doctor, which brings me back to what I was saying. Sorry for going back in circles, but how do I find a doctor if I'm already sick? I don't have the access to facilities. So there's very few doctors who are willing to see you on an emergency basis, and I find that quite unfortunate. And maybe someone who understands it better can explain for us in the comments, because I found it very complicated that you can't just show up in hospital and be treated for an emergency. That unless you're falling and you need an ambulance, then you can't just walk to hospital and do triage and be seen by a doctor unless you have a personal doctor. And even if you have a personal doctor, they will only take you on appointment basis. Sir, oh wait a minute, let me just postpone my sickness, I'll see you tomorrow. So yeah, I find it a bit complicated. Some cases just need, for you to have someone close to you who will guide you through that. Again, have a contact on the ground to make your experience 10 times easier. But that's just something I found very bizarre. And I didn't have to interact with the medical emergency type thing again. So I can't say I'm 100% knowledgeable on it, but that's as far as I know. Yes, there is a carte vitale. You'll have to apply for it. You will have to use your social security number, which you have to wait to be given. Hopefully the French bureaucracy codes are good to you and it will come as soon as possible. But if not, then you have to wait for even months for you to get your social security number. And then when you get your social security number, you will get your carte vitale. And before you get your carte vitale, you might just have to shell some money out of your pocket. So just pray you don't get sick, is the bottom line of this explanation. So the next question I got is, I am a churchgoer, a Catholic in particular, so are there some Catholic churches? And the answer is yes. In at least every city you will visit in France, there's gonna be at least one Catholic church, cathedral. Like, there's an abundance of cathedrals in France. Now the gag is, as you all know, France is a very liberal, very secular country. They call it laïcité. Laïcité is secularism, and they basically believe that everyone has the right to believe in what they believe in, do whatever they want, or not believe if they choose not to believe. So there's a lot of liberty in what you can do. And then the other thing is also, because of how diverse the people in France are, there's not really published religion and all that. So that's the basis of the question. Now, to answer your question, yes, there's gonna be a lot of cathedrals, a lot of Catholic churches, and even other denominations. But it's very hard to find them because the majority of the people around you will probably believe in laïcité. And by the time you get a community of churchgoers, it's gonna be a bit tricky. The other thing is, yes, I mentioned there's a lot of cathedrals, but most of them serve more of a museum purpose than a place of worship purpose. What do I mean? You'll find a very beautifully constructed cathedral, but people will go in not to service or commune, but to take photos and, you know, just admire the architecture. That's the main thing for most people. But that said, every Sunday, I believe, for most cathedrals and most other beautifully constructed churches, and even for the average churches, you know, people go to church. There are priests, there are, you know, sisters and everything. So yes, you will find what you're looking for, but you have to be very specific and persistent in looking for your Christian community if that's what you want to do. Again, maybe for people who are not very familiar with the demographic of French citizens, there's also a lot of Muslims in France because there's a lot of people coming from North Africa, Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, and also other countries of the world. So because of that, you can also find a very great Muslim community if that's what you believe in. So you don't really have to worry about that. For the Christians, good luck. I mean, we're there. I was there. I went to church. In fact, I lived just outside a small chapel where I used to pray most times. But I feel like Christianity is getting more and more diminished, unfortunately, in this world. So you just have to make the effort to find your church, but you will be fine. And if all else fails, just join your church through YouTube, your home church, or whatever church you want to, you know, commune with. Just YouTube is your friend. The next question is, was there a time you ever encountered racism? If yes, who was it from? This question is very heavy because I cannot stand here and say that my experience was 10 out of 10 perfect, you know, flowers, rainbows and butterflies all through and through. I remember my first few months in France were very blissful because I still had that factor, like, whoa, I'm in a new country, I'm doing this, I'm seeing this for the first time, I'm meeting new people for the first time, I'm speaking a new language for the first time. You know, there's a lot of excitement, there was a lot of wowness to everything I did, there was a lot of happiness. So I can't really say I was looking out for subtleties and, you know, like things like racism per se. I was very aware of it, don't get me wrong. I was very aware that I was black in a predominantly European country, but that was not something I was seeking out. And just to say that I was also very lucky to end up in a very, very beautiful small town full of nice people in the south of France. Most people were so sweet, everyone was so sweet, and then I think because of the eagerness I had, people just found me like, you know, a small deer in headlights, and they just it was endearing for them. So a lot of people I found were very helpful, and it was a very pleasant experience overall. However, the more I entered the system, and I think I also mentioned this in a previous video, at some point the rose-colored glasses came off and things were just looking very murky, and I was just in a very pessimistic headspace. So when that happened, that was like January this year, earlier this year, I just started noticing the smallest microaggressions across a range of interactions. So the first one I really felt something was off was when I went to the CAF offices. CAF, I explained in a previous video, is the organization that helps with housing. You get housing allowance, housing benefits if you need them. So I remember there was a time my friends and I tried to apply for CAF. Like 4 times we went, and 4 times we were told we were rejected from the system because we didn't have a specific type of visa, and we knew very well that was some BS.
It's BS. They made it up. They lie.
Because like in the requirements shown in the website, there was a specific type of visa that we had, and we had it, and we had all other documents, and we had all the justifications, and yet somehow it was still denied. So at that point, I felt, me and my friends felt very targeted, and it was not a nice experience. But luckily we were able to work through it, and everything worked out in the end, and we got our money in lump sum towards the end of the program. So things kind of worked out. Apart from that, I can't honestly say I've ever experienced any type of racism in France. There's sometimes people give me weird looks, especially when I had my hair out in an afro. Like, you just see someone looking at you, you don't know if it's amusement or like judgment, you know? But those are very minor things, and I genuinely don't care. I couldn't care less. But there's never really a moment when someone came up to me and said, "Oh, you're black, I hate you." You know, like there was never that kind of moment. And every other moment I can think of was just probably like small, tiny, microaggressions that I may or may not have taken out of context. That said, that's my experience. I know there's people who go through so much. So all I would advise you is keep an open mind. Don't take everything, so personally, because that's no way to live. I don't believe in just like being eager to be offended, So just try and go with an open mind, positive mindset. But if something does happen, also be ready to stand up for yourself. Because in this life, you can't allow someone else to sit on you. General observation you can make is the French people are they know how to repress their distaste, Like no one will ever really tell you, "I don't like that." Most people at least won't. They might show it with their facial expressions, but most people won't. So you can get through whatever duration you'll be there without having to necessarily experience direct microaggression. But sometimes you'll feel someone's vibe is off with you. And, it is how it is. People have different experiences. But for me personally, it was mostly good. Mostly good. But yeah, I do acknowledge that these things happen. And you need to stand up for yourself. When someone tries to make you feel lesser than just because of how you look or where you come from, you cannot accept that. So I hope that answers that, and I hope your experience is going to be very, very positive. The next question, my favorite. Are groceries expensive? Approximately how much will you need for groceries and food? Again, I think this really depends on you and your eating habits and what you're into. That said, I do have a list of supermarkets that I will recommend for you to go grocery shopping, and I will go from the cheapest to the most expensive, because I was a mumu girl when I got to France. In Kenya we have a Carrefour, but I think it's under different management. I think the brand Carrefour is originally from France, but the Carrefour that runs in Kenya is managed by Majid Al Futtaim, which is in the Middle East. So because of that, maybe because the management is different and the prices in Carrefour are usually very, friendly compared to other supermarkets, then I went with that mentality of Carrefour, Kenya is going to be the same as Carrefour in France. So I used to shop in Carrefour like all the time. And I was like, it was not until the last month, literally the last 3 weeks of my existence in France, that I discovered another supermarket that was like 10 times cheaper. And I was like, if only I could go back and get back all my money that I spent in Carrefour. Anyway, I'm trying to heal. I'm healing. I'm going to give you a list of the supermarkets that I came across in France, from the least expensive to the most expensive. From there, you can work out your budget, and then you can see how to manage your finances when it comes to grocery shopping. From the least expensive, Lidl is everyone's favorite. I loved Lidl. So sad that I only discovered Lidl the last like 3 weeks of my experience in France. I was so mad at myself for not exploring more, but Lidl is basically where you can find everything for cheap. Literally everything you need to survive in a household, you will find it in Lidl for like 10 times cheaper than your average supermarket. The second supermarket, which is more or less around the Lidl range is Aldi. Aldi, I think, is a multinational brand, and I think it's also in other countries, especially in the West, and it also has very fair prices, and I really enjoyed it. The third one, which we are getting to the expensive ranges now, is called Leclerc. Leclerc is also a very big franchise in France. It's a very big supermarket franchise. The prices are mid. Some things are extremely cheap, some things are moderate, some things are average price, as the same as Lidl and the most expensive supermarket. From Leclerc, I will go to Carrefour. Carrefour is pretty much up there. And then to the top of the food chain, this is Monoprix. Now, Monoprix, I don't know who it's designed for. It's usually found in very convenient places, but it's the most expensive. And I remember the first day, and yeah, being a newcomer, you just have to accept that you will be foolish, but the foolishness will go decreasing. Don't worry, because I think the first 2 weeks in France, I used to shop full grocery shopping in Monoprix. And anyone who knows and has lived in France knows Monoprix is just somewhere you go to grab something because you have no other option. On average, you spend around 80 euros to do monthly shopping. If you need a price range, maybe try doing 80 euros per 2 weeks or per month, and then see how that takes you, and then you can adjust it. Next question. What is the minimum amount of money you should carry for your survival? Now, this is also a very conditional question because it really depends on where you end up. If you're going to end up in a big city like Paris, baby, just carry as much money as you can. But just like pool all the money you own, all your net worth, bring it with you. Especially if you're coming from a country with a lower currency value than the euro, then you will need to pull your socks a little bit. You know what I mean? But if you're coming from a country where you use the dollar or the British pound, you know, where currencies are pretty much at par with the euro, then you don't have to struggle so much. But I will use the reference that we were given for the language assistant program. In the handbook, we were advised to come with at least 1,000 euros, but I would highly advise, if you can afford to save up, if you have parents to support you and give you a little bit of extra cash, the better. Because one thing about your first month, you're gonna make a lot of financially dumb decisions. Not because you're not smart, but because you don't know any better. Because if you see the options that are there for you, you don't necessarily know during the first month which is the best and cheapest option to go with. Case in point, the example I gave you with the supermarkets. Because of that, I will give you the baseline of 1,000 euros if you're going to a mid to small town, okay? Because the rent is going to be a bit more manageable. The rent will probably range from 350 to 550, maybe 600 euros at the maximum. So at least you can pay rent, and then for the 400 remaining euros, you can use to keep, you know, for expenses and keep upkeep, a bit of transport here and there. But that's in a very, you know, modest sized city. If you're going to Paris, come with all the money you own. Paris is very expensive. You have to be on the move a lot. The rent prices through the roof, so you have to be as ready as possible. That said, of course, you need to have some savings. You don't just come with all the disposable cash like that. So again, that's very conditional. But 1,000 euros, if you're coming for the language assistant program, try to aim for 1,000 euros, maybe 1,500. Anything above that will be a bonus, and you'll have a very comfortable experience until you're paid, and then you can start managing your finances accordingly. The next question I got is the North or the South? To be or not to be? This is an ongoing debate about the North versus the South in France, whereby, you know, people have this thing where they say people from the North are a bit more grumpy because they don't get enough sun, whereas people in the South are very relaxed, they are happy all the time because the weather is more Mediterranean, there's more sunny days and all of that. But I will say this, wherever you end up, France is France. The system is pretty much the same. Bigger cities, you'll obviously have more things to think about, but you'll also have a more lively, a more exciting experience. Whereas in the South, life is a bit more slow and, you know, relaxing. If you're moving to France for strategic reasons, meaning probably you're going there on your first job and you're looking to advance your career after the first job contract ends, then I would highly advise for you to move to the north. Why? Because it's closer to the bigger cities, most of the bigger cities. Paris is there, Lyon is there, Reims is there, and also from Paris you can move easier to the other European countries like Germany. You have Belgium just close by, you have the Netherlands if you go further northeast, and then you have the United Kingdom if you move slightly northwest. So you know, Paris also just gives you a faster paced life. If you're looking for new opportunities, you're probably gonna get most of them in Ile-de-France. Ile-de-France basically means Paris and its greater metropolitan region, and basically that region where Paris exists, Paris and all the other cities around it exist, called Ile-de-France. And Ile-de-France is where you probably need to be if you're looking to expand yourself career-wise, which most people who are moving to France, especially if you're young in your 20s, are probably looking to do. So that's it. But if you're looking to romanticize your life, live a very slow countryside living life, enjoy wine, go on afternoon strolls, visit castles, go see the ocean, bask in the sun. If you have a bit of money basically and you're looking to enjoy it, move to the south. That's where you need to be. Why? Because life, like I said, there is much more slower. Things are easier. Things are more pleasant. No one is in that big of a rush. Don't get me wrong. Things are still moving. There's still cities in the south, you know, like Toulouse is there, Montpellier is there. So, you know, there's still life going on, but it's a bit less stressful and a bit less expensive. And it's the perfect place to be, especially if you're looking to retire or if you're looking to just enjoy slow living, romanticize your life basically. The weather in the south is also incredible compared to the north. It's closer to the tropics, so you have more sunny days, like I said. Overall, 10 out of 10 experience. I did not necessarily choose the south because I knew all of this. I just really wanted to be closer to my friend, the only friend I knew in France at the time, who lived in Montpellier, and she was my only lifeline. So I chose a city that was close to hers, and she lives in the south, so that's just where I ended up. But if I had a more strategic approach to moving to France, then I would have probably chosen to go up north, because probably everyone I know who ended up north either remained in France and extended their contracts or switched up their jobs and are now working somewhere in Paris or close by. So it really depends on what your strategy and motivation is to move to France. The next question I received is, how is the nightlife there? Like, can you go out and have fun, etc, etc? So the answer is yes. However, it's gonna depend on where you live. Truth be told, if you're living in a small city, your social life might suffer a little bit. Why? Because people who live in smaller towns, yes, there are a few spots that the locals go to, but also people who live in smaller towns are mostly a bit older. And I would say this example is specific to me because in Carcassonne, like I said in my previous video, is mostly a retirement city. It's a retirement town. So most of the people you find there are a bit older. And even if there's young people, they're probably young teenagers who are just waiting to join uni and get out of that town. But it was a very beautiful town. Anyways, what I'm saying is, if you live in a small town, you are better off moving to a bigger town on the weekends, having your fun, and then coming back probably on Sunday or whatever. So this is especially if you're really hell-bent on having a good time. Of course, this is not going to be practical every weekend. The good thing with France is the transport system works really well. So you can just take a train out on Friday, train back in on Saturday morning or whatever, like depending on what you want to do. But the scene is nice. The few times I went out, we had so much fun. I remember there's a time one of our friends, it was my birthday. On my birthday, we went out, we danced, we had so much fun, you know, we like had fond memories. But overall, great vibes. The music was nice. I was actually impressed. But again, the smaller the city, the lower the vibes. The bigger the city, the more diverse the people, hence the better the vibes. You get me? You get me? All right. The last question from this series is, can I carry less clothes from home and do clothes shopping there? Yes, and I would actually suggest that you carry the least amount of clothes possible from home, because number one, you will quickly find out that the clothes you thought will help you in winter will in fact not help you. And especially if you come from a country that does not experience winter, you don't have to worry about impressing everyone with how fashionable you are. I mean, if that's your thing, go for it, but don't let it be like a stress factor where you're thinking, oh, if I don't pack this, then how are they gonna know I'm a baddie, 10 out of 10, 7 out of 7 days of the week. Like, you don't have to worry about all that. I promise you, no one cares, especially during winter. We're in like jackets and it's raining and everyone just is trying to make it to go home. No one cares like that. Thank you so much if you've watched this video to the end, and I hope that this video has been beneficial to someone who's been looking for a few answers on things they should consider before they move to France. And if you've decided to move, I wish you the very best of luck, and congratulations to you on being so brave as to make such a bold decision as that, and may the odds ever be in your favor. Also, really quickly, if you have any questions that I may not have touched on, please feel free to type them in the comments below, and I will be very keen to answer them. And also, if I see the questions have batched up to where I can make a separate video just to answer those questions in a very detailed format as I have done in this video, then I'm more than happy to make another video. Also, don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe to my channel for more videos, guys, and I will see you on the next one. Until next time, goodbye.